teaming up with FTX. It is all about cryptocurrencies. In this tournament, we have added $100,000 worth of Bitcoins to the prize fund. And in the studio and at home, we hope you are learning a lot about Bitcoins and cryptocurrencies. And we are so happy right now to be joined by Raoul Pal. He's the CEO and co-founder of Real Vision. Hi, Raoul.
Great to be here.
So happy to have you here. And well, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about your profession and your journey with crypto?
Yeah, my profession is I was kind of 30 years at the epicenter of the financial system. So I was working for investment banks in London. I ended up at Goldman Sachs, where I started and managed the hedge fund sales business and equities and equity derivatives. I then also started and managed a large global macro hedge fund for one of the largest hedge fund firms in the world. And then kind of semi-retired to Spain and started writing macroeconomic research and strategy for the world's biggest hedge funds, family offices, and that kind of thing. And it was while I was in Spain that I started to see how bad the financial system was becoming. So I was there for 2008. I was one of the people who kind of predicted what was going on. A lot of the kind of famous people from The Big Short were clients of mine. We kind of all knew what was going on. But what was bad was people didn't really understand the magnitude of the debt problems and all of this stuff. And then we got, if you remember, the European crisis a few years later, and we almost lost the euro, the European banking system. And I started to search for a solution. I thought we need to find an answer because this debt story just doesn't stop. And the financial system is broken and people don't trust it and they don't trust the media. They don't trust anybody anymore. Occupy Wall Street movements had started, the Indignados in Spain, all of these things were going on. And in that search of a solution, I was looking at trying to set up the world's safest bank at the time. And then a client of mine tapped me on the shoulder and said, listen, you need to look at Bitcoin. This was 2012. I started looking at it. And I realized that the blockchain technology and Bitcoin itself potentially offered a future way out, where things were recorded in terms of trusted ownership of things. There was an asset that had a fixed supply, and it solved many of the problems. And then as it developed, things like Ethereum came along, where smart contracts came. And suddenly you could see the whole future of the financial system lay potentially over in this new sector. And that became increasingly exciting. I invested Bitcoin first time in 2013, and then I've been involved on and off since then. I didn't hold it all the way. I wish I had, but I bought it in 2013, sold it in 2017 into that big rally, and then I became very, very active once we started to see the next recession, which was March last year. I was waiting for the next big catalyst, and this was it. It was like, okay, again, we're going to test the global economy, the financial system, the printing of money, all of these things, and Bitcoin was going to be one of the answers. And so I went all in at that stage and have remained so since.
Wow. Well, so cryptocurrencies, basically, it has a very short history. It's a young product, right?
It is, but what's fascinating about it is it's based around network effects. And the value of a network is based on the number of people that are active within the network. They're called nodes. Now, Bitcoin operates the same way, but it's a network of money. So people are very highly incentivized to bring new people into the network and let the network grow. So what is fascinating is if you look at the other great network effect that we had in recent years was the adoption of the internet from 1990 to 2000. Internet adoption in terms of number of people using the internet grew by 63% a year from 1990 to 2000. Cryptocurrencies in their first 10 years are growing at 113%. It's the fastest adoption of any technology in all recorded history.
Wow. Well, and we are very excited now because chess is now teaming up with crypto, and it seems to be some ways to compare them, with engines being a super big, important thing, and also, deep analysis being a big thing. How do you feel about chess and crypto teaming up?
Look, it's an obvious thing, and I guess that's why Sam Bankman-Fried from FTX is a friend of mine. Is a sponsor of this. Is chess is all about living in the future and looking at the probabilities of outcomes. Right? There's no certainties in chess until you get to the end game. There's no certainties in cryptocurrencies. But what you're trying to do is play the game 5 or 10 steps ahead, which is what the very best chess players do. Anybody who tries to play in the present move is missing the bigger picture of where this is going. And cryptocurrencies are exactly the same. Because if we're talking about an adoption of a new system, we need to kind of think where it's going, not what the price is doing today. Much like in chess, you might sacrifice a pawn for a particular strategic advantage. You also understand in crypto markets, we see volatility. And volatility is acceptable if it gives you the reward at the end, which is more adoption and prices rising higher and more use cases. So look, they're very, very similar in how you strategically approach them.
Yeah. And on that subject, what future changes do you envisage for cryptocurrencies, especially as it's such a young market?
I think it's going to be the biggest change in business models that any of us have ever seen. So forget the finance system. So, we've seen that we've got automated borrowing and lending called DeFi going on, and we've got different types of cryptocurrencies with different attributes, protocols they're called. And that's all okay, but for most of us, that doesn't really kind of touch our lives that much. We can, of course, invest in them. But what's really about to happen is everybody with a community or every business with a community is going to tokenize. We're going to create incentives that aren't driven around the platforms such as Facebook and Google, but in fact driven around the incentives of that community to drive value to that community, and everybody shares in it. This is a huge change. We're also going to tokenize assets, things like real estate. So a hugely expensive apartment in Manhattan, which none of us can afford, we can all have a share of. That's very different. So we're also going to tokenize most of the current financial markets as well, because it gives us this trusted ownership. And the other thing moving towards is we're all going to start living in a more digital future. I mean, there's no real reason why chess tournaments are physical. In the end, you can play them in an amazing metaverse environment. That's the digital worlds environment. And all of these digital worlds where we're seeing gaming as a massive part of the future is all of those are tied together, tend to be tied together by blockchain technology as well. So it's a big, massive change for all of us, and probably one of the biggest changes we've ever faced. It's kind of an extension of the internet, but this is the internet of value, the exchange, the ownership, the trust of value. And that's a big, big difference.
And Raoul, a lot of our viewers, they're new to chess, but they're also new to crypto. Do you have any words of wisdom on just the first few steps they should take if they are interested into getting into that world?
I'm going to listen now.
Yeah, the idea is realize that this is not a short-term trading thing. So don't be tempted to try and make a quick buck. Think of it like the chess game, where you're playing a longer-term game. And the idea here is to slowly invest by, we call it dollar cost averaging. So you buy a bit every week or every month and just keep over time adding more to your trade. So you don't worry if it goes up and down in the short term because you're playing for the big picture. Also, tend to start with Bitcoin and probably Ethereum, because those are the ones you need to get to know first. Those are the big daddies of the space, the important protocols that have the most adoption. After that, you can learn about other areas. But that's how I'd approach it.
And well, finally, Raoul, I mentioned in the FTX Cup, we are giving out $100,000 worth of Bitcoins in prize fund. We started out last Monday with $100,000. What do you think it's going to be when we finish in 8 days from now?
8 days from now, I think it's probably about 10% higher.
Okay.
So I think your $100,000 might be worth $110,000.
Well, why do you say that? Because we see all these red numbers for Bitcoins nowadays.
Yes, and I think the selling crescendo peaked over this weekend. So Bitcoin didn't make a new low. It tried. Ethereum made a new low and rejected it. So I think the probability is that we'll see people adding into this sell-off and buying more Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I think Bitcoin should go higher over the course of this week.
Fantastic. All right. I think our player is going to be super excited to hear that. Raoul, thank you so much for joining us and giving us all your insight. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Not at all. And good luck with the tournament. I hope it goes well.
Thank you so much.